Hey guys, making this video for a third time. Gonna cover the last three pre-market runners, AUUD, LASE, and ADIL today. Gonna kind of focus on pre-market volume, and kind of how these stronger pre-market stocks actually make moves in the pre-market. What type of patterns are usually that usually happen leading up to big pushes, right? How they find support, what the book looks like, what type of tricks are used, that type of thing. Um, I had two trades. I had AAUD. I did a short earlier in the pre-market, which actually turned out being bad, which got me really thinking about, these pre-market, potential long trap looking candles, and kind of what especially from a value perspective, what separates the ones that tend to have continuation where the short doesn't work and ones that tend to fade, right? So, and then I took a scalp short and I shorted the painted backside clear out, right? Where it had painted lower highs, stock already made multiple squeezes. It did have a chance to squeeze high day. I was cognizant of a possible high day squeeze, but the book was very bearish, and I had a nice little fade. And I guess I should have swung this because it faded pretty deeply yesterday and today. But and believe it or not, I actually only took one trade here. I shorted the. This is a classic. I used to short this candle 10 times out of 10, right here. This candle, get a big aggressive move, painted 3.73 level. They swipe that level and they pull it. Usually a classic long trap move. But this is, I started thinking about how I would take these trades and I would get squeezed on some type of manipulated price action later on. And I actually avoided this and kind of scalped along. The reason I scalped along is because when you're longing a stock this far up, unless there's just like constant billion bids following it up, you usually just want to take the move into the clear out level. Especially at market open, you do risk like a random knife, So it's you do want to be. I was just trying to get out before market open, but yeah, enough about the charts. We'll go to AUUD first, and just looking at the volume, right? So one thing I always said was volume determines pattern, and I still believe that. But I never quite noticed, sorry, um, how important that was, right, in the pre-market, right? Because I'm trying to think of how the chart's being painted and how aggressive some of these moves are. Like you see this aggressive push, high relative volume. A lot of long traps come after this like high relative volume initiation, um, where a lot of people might want to chase this push and then they knife it. Like that's, a lot of the best shorts come after, high volume pushes towards highs, right? But, uh, you know, one thing I've noticed very well is it's becoming clear to me that it's important to separate stocks trading, let's say, close to 500,000 shares a minute, especially if it's doing it consistent. If you're getting like this, a lot of times it's in this 400 to 600K range. And sometimes you might even get candles above that. You might get 750K candles, 1 million share candles. You might get a bunch of different candles. But overall, it tends to be 4 to 600K is the typical range where, especially these stocks where the volume is consistent, the stock is hanging out in the top of its range, right? You're getting increasing volume on the highs, right? These are all potentially bullish factors, and then you get patterns that tend to trap shorts, which the most classic pattern is either a super quick dump down to the 1 minute 20 or sometimes even 1 minute 50, or a walk down, which is like lower high, lower high, lower high, where it's like slow, controlled selling, usually to some MA. In this case, it kind of wasn't super clear exactly. I guess they wanted to swipe VWAP here. It was a little. I didn't get this long, and actually, um, just because it wasn't matching up with the 50 or the 20. Uh, Doesn't always have to in this. It's evident in this, but it usually does. But yeah, these are the ones where it's like nice, consistent volume, walk down structure. That's what a lot of these aggressive moves um, tend to not work, right? And they tend to catch the MAs on the pullbacks, right? So, um, and then there's a lot of games, right? There's a lot of pre-market games. There's a lot of pre-market games on the book, especially on the ask and the bid, right? We talked before about huge bids or huge, a huge ask being bullish and a huge bid being bearish, right? In certain contexts, this was a case where they threw up a 50,000 share ask. It was holding the stock down. It was originally at 325, then they moved it up to 330. Um, and I said to my Discord, I was like, it has to break the 1 minute 20 and fade if this trade's going to work. And instead, what they did is they caught the 1 minute 20 and did this big initiation, right? That's even before this candle. Talk about this candle. And once I saw that come in, and I was like, oh, it's and it's right below high a day. Um, I just know from experience that this is a situation where a big ask is potentially bullish, and now we're getting increasing volume, right? New highs, right? New highs, and um, this is incredibly bullish. They love to do these little walk downs, and like look, all these squeezes are just hyper aggressive, right? This is 15 minutes of walk down with a 3 minute push, right? It's super common and on these high volume trappy stocks in the pre-market. Uh, but yeah, I'll go over because I really want to. This is a classic backside clear out, right? This is your classic midday short pattern where you have to wait. I usually say 45 minutes to an hour and a half. This is about an hour and a half. Funny enough, ADIL today had like a 5 hour under VWAP soak, and I was holding my crying daughter because she woke up early from her nap and was tired, and I actually traded this move, this VWAP clear out to the 1 minute 200, but then I missed this move. But interesting enough, it's kind of doing weird stuff over here. Maybe it makes a crazy after hours push, but I want to focus on LASE. Pre-market, similar volume profile, right? This was an A plus long. I'm usually at my computer around 8:15, 8:20 market time, so I missed this. This is a perfect lower high paint, and they put huge bids this is the 1 minute 50, 5 minute 9. They put 5 minute 9 here is a little cleaner actually, right? Clean 5 minute 9 soak. But yeah, they stacked massive bids. No, not a lot of orders on the ask. I notice a lot of times, and what they do is actually they put orders on the ask, they fill them on these pushes, they pull it back down to the bids, and the bids are either still there or they stack more bids and then they initiate. It's pretty interesting. But this was nice lower high paint. This was a few people in my short focus Discord room caught the long here in the 210s, 220s. And this is, the best longs, and this is something super bullish, guys, is when you get not just increasing volume, but massively increasing volume. Those longs always have the most potential for going 50%, 80%, 100%. It's like the golden situation where it's like just enough volume for the book to be populated enough, right? Because I think about really, really, really thin volume stocks is the book tends to be real thin. It tends to be very hard to trust, even if the candlestick pattern looks decent. On some of these pre-market stocks that are trading like 10,000 shares a minute, 8,000 shares a minute, 15,000. It's hard to be confident. A, it's hard to size, and B, it's hard to trust the price action of the book. But this is like really the best case scenario where you're getting like in the 100 to 200K range, but it's painting a nice long pattern with clear bids on the book. And then the big volume starts to come in. These are the best longs. No reason to short any of this. Look at this. Like not only is it straight up the 1 minute 9, but look at the volume. So now we're getting that 400, 500, 600K volume come in, right? And what do we get? You know, get our crazy big push. Um, Here's an important lesson about longing. Because, I covered a lot about these 1 minute 50, 1 minute 20 pullbacks. I always say that in terms of like these like clean 1 minute 20, 1 minute 50 pullbacks that produce big moves, overall, the earlier in the move it happens, the better, right? In my Discord, I have a saying that goes, the first move's the best move when it comes to longing. And it simply means the first move after the initial pop, right? So you got the initial pop. So the first pullback and the first actual structure, right? That is always the long, if the long works, that's going to be the best long on this pretty much all day. And the more extended something, especially once you start getting to, over 100%, 150, once you start getting to those higher percentile numbers, it doesn't mean follow-up longs are not going to work. That's not what it means. It means that, the clean 1 minute 20 pullbacks with clean continuation is less likely to happen. And instead, what happens is it shifts towards more manipulated patterns, right? Where you get very choppy, very controlled price action, right? Where a lot of support levels are being swiped, and sometimes you don't know how deep they're going to swipe them, right? We saw this on, was it AUUD? I mean, look at AUUD. Here, this is a good example. So AUD is opening at the top of its range, right? Which is usually bearish. I usually don't expect a whole lot of continuation when a stock is essentially having a super aggressive 100, 200% push and opening right at the top of its range. It's usually bearish, but I do want to be careful because the volume is kind of crazy. But this is what I mean. Like, so you get a 1 minute 20 pullback, and it long traps, and then it knifes, and then it knifes, and then it knifes, and then it knifes, right? You get this like knife, 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 and you never know what support level. You don't know if they're even going to bring it back up, and if they do bring it back up, you don't know how many support levels are going to swipe. So it's like, especially on these overextended tickers, even at market open, 98% of the time, I'm not really looking to go long unless the market is really supporting that type of move. And there's a super clean read, but overall, the best market open longs are the ones that are either the ones that have been pulled down super far, opening at the bottom of its range, or the plays that are only up like 30%. Something that's not up, something that's trading decent volume and a nice structure and book, but not up too much, right? Those are the best market open longs, not something up 180, 200% market open, right? Which is why on these 1 minute 20 pullbacks, it knifes, right? It long traps and it knives, right? So this is not a good 1 minute 20 long. But yeah, look at this. They swiped all the way to 4, and then they do an up-only manipulated squeeze, right? It's just like, it's so hard. This is what longs look like on extended tickers and low floats, right? Once you start getting away from the initial moves, right? Go back to LASE, the initial move, where you get cleaner long patterns, the less, the less up a stock is, right? So, and yeah, I scalped this because I know, we had this painted, here's a long trap, right? So we get the 1 minute 20 long trap move. It knifes, it even makes a few lower lows, swipes this 3.5 level. Just how AUUD swiped $4, just swipe 3.5, right? A lot of these manipulated moves they'll bring it down to half-dollar and whole-dollar levels to swipe it, or they'll bring it down to VWAP. They'll bring it down to these common support levels before bringing it back up and squeezing it, right? So, but I could open the book on this, but I'll just tell you what happened. So you never want to chase this green candle. There's no obvious entry signal for me down here. But what they did is they, did this aggressive move. You never want to chase this. Anytime in low float land, you never want to chase big green candles like 98% of the time. It's almost always better to wait for a pullback into some bids on the book, and that's what they did. They pulled it back. They had a bid at 3.5, and right around here, right before this initiation, they came in with a second bid, and they pushed it up. Yeah, and we'll go to the play today, ADIL. Now this was a long. I need to learn. A lot of times. So this is the long here, right? So you get a big aggressive push, trading 400 to 600K per minute, making new highs, super aggressive, puts in a lower high right here, and knife. Where's the knifing to? The 1 minute 20. Now what I was waiting for was I was gonna wait for it to touch it once. I saw this pop, and I thought this pop had like no bids on it, so I thought it was gonna pop, knife again, maybe come in with some new bids, or maybe the old bids would hold, or maybe they would get sold into, and new bids would show up right after that. And then I was essentially waiting for a second bounce, and it didn't. It went straight up, and a few people in my room who liked long into the first pullback, right into the 1 minute 20, got the long. I tend to miss those, right? I tend to miss those longs when it happens like this. And yeah, this was nice. People got in near two, and look at that. It's an instant 20% move in 5 minutes, right? Um, and yeah, and then what do you call it? This chart was actually so interesting because it did nothing but lower high the entire day. Look how many lower highs are on this. Like just on this fade. Lower high, knife, lower high, lower high, lower high, lower high. Isn't it interesting that the stock that's doing this in the afternoon was the stock that did nothing but lower highs for 3.5 hours? You know what I mean? And yeah, funny enough, that this was the only little trade I took. It was like a 15-cent trade. I guess that's nice. I didn't really trade anything else on it. But yeah, it's kind of chopping around. I mean, who knows what's gonna happen with this thing? You know, the 5.5 hour under VWAP. You can't tell. Okay, my thinkorswim VWAP is not showing because my VWAP ends right here. That's because when you edit candles, you can edit individual candles by clicking correct this bar. You can edit individual candles, and when you do, for some reason, it doesn't stop the MAs from following the stock, but it stops the VWAP from following the stock. But yeah, there's nowadays I feel like every low flow ticker has these single orders, and they're so annoying, man. These single orders, dude. What happens is people get slippage on certain routes when they're trading. It only takes one person to do this. One person could have 1,000 shares of slippage, where let's say here, we get a single order all the way at 2.9 or something. You get this crazy wick that's like 10% above what the current price is, and your broker just thinkorswim will just show it, and it's just like, you can double check, you can cross reference with the book, to see, man, maybe this thing's maybe I was holding my crying daughter and I missed this move, and maybe it's just like, look at this, it's nothing but lower highs all the way down, like, yeah, market just closed, so let's see if they decide to just absolutely squeeze this thing. I mean, why not? Why not squeeze this thing? It looks, we still have a bunch of painted lower highs. So, and after hours book tends to be, I tend to not trade after hours book unless it's a special situation, because the after hours book tends to be very, very thin, even thinner than the pre-market. At least pre-market post 7. By the way, all these longs I talk about are post 7 a.m. The best pre-market longs definitely come after 7 a.m. for sure. But yeah, after hours book is stupid thin. Actually, I'll just open it for you. Here's the book right now. So it closed near the top here in the book. I mean, someone's throwing up a 11,000 share ask, but besides that, it's really hard to tell. Somebody took out the entire thing right there, and it's just thin. Like, and compare how empty this book is. Like, even if we zoom in, it's like a few random 2,000, 3,000 share orders. Go back to the pre-market. Here's the 1 minute 20 walk down right here. Right? 1 minute 20 walk down. 0 offers on the ask. And yeah, I just didn't catch that one. But yeah, after hours is tough. Does look like they want to squeeze it, so it's going up right now. So I don't know. Could be a crazy multi-day runner. Maybe it goes to like $3 in the after hours, or maybe they're just swiping this. The bearish thesis is they swipe this lower high, and like it stalls somewhere up here and then pulls. I mean, you never know. There's a million things they do. So probably not going to trade it regardless. But anyways, yeah, want to talk about pre-market, um, pre-market volume, bullish pre-market volume. You know, controlled walk downs, common MA support levels. You know, and the rotations and pre-market longs on these higher volume names, right? So that's what today's video is about. Information down below about the Discord, and you guys have a good one. See ya.